Okay. Yesterday, a few people's calculators were misbehaving. And sometimes you can track back what's happening with the calculator, but just like your computer, sometimes it's like, I don't know what this computer is trying to do here. Let me just reset the whole thing and we'll try again, you know? And it's a great strategy for computers, also for any electronics around your house. You know, TV is misbehaving, unplug it for 5 minutes, plug it back in, see what's gonna happen. And the way to do that in your calculator, and let me show you on here, to clear information stored in the calculator's memory. So somebody, by accident, you might have changed a setting, or somebody else who had your calculator before might have changed a setting. So don't do this unless something's going wrong. You know, you're like, the window's just not right, I can't get anything to work right. You go menu ABC, and again, what I said before, I don't really memorize the menu buttons. I just go menu, and I look around for, it's called system, and it's down in the bottom corner there called system. So when I go to system, there's all these choices: contrast, auto power off, language, version, but the one I want is reset. And again, just go to that menu, you don't have to reset yours, but that's the reset of memories. And then so the one I want is main memories, not the storage memories. This thing has like a hard drive inside of it, and we'll deal with that another day, but the one you want is main memories. And it says reset main memories, and I say F1 for yes, and then it resets all that. So if things are just acting completely wonky, then just go to that. So I sort of skipped over that yesterday. I was hoping all the calculators were in great shape, but some of them weren't. So then so that's in your PowerPoint as well. Then we talked about numeric computations, typing things in, linear versus math mode. I forget where we ended up. Let me just try and remember here. It was somewhere, it was in graphing. And it was graphing these two things. So that's where I'm going to pick it up again. I'm going to go through those graphing, because there's a couple of things I sort of glossed over at the end, because we sort of ran out of time there at the end, and I didn't want to rush through it. So I'm going to go into graph mode over here, 5. And I'm going to put in these two graphs again, 5. And when you hit the X theta T button, and you're in graphing mode, what'll come up is an X. And you're like, why is it X theta T? Well, you're going to see today, in the next lesson that I do today, you're going to see that button sort of becomes whatever you want it to be. If you're in the right menu, maybe that'll be a theta. Maybe it'll be a T. It depends on what you're typing in. Anyways, 5x, and there's a squared button. So I'm going to do squared minus 2x. X minus 10. Enter, and then the other one was 14x plus 1. And one thing that came up is you can't just do anything now. It's still got all these things at the bottom. As I hit enter, and once those are both in, then I get my choices here. And we'll talk more about some of those choices as we go along. The one we want is draw. Now I need to tell you, when you hit draw, just about anything can happen. It depends on what the window settings were. And you're so used to iPhones and computers that do a great job of choosing the right window for what you're doing. This is going to catch you off guard, because the window's going to look really bad like this. And I talked about this a little bit yesterday. The first thing I always go to is zoom. Is it F2? Yeah. F2, and then I go to zoom auto. And I give the calculator a chance to do the right thing and to think it through and make a nice zoom for me. Well, I don't love the zoom it did there, but I at least can see everything that's going on. There's a parabola and a line. All the main features are in this section. So I like zoom from there. I like zoom box, and then I can select the top left and the top and the bottom right just by using my arrow over keys. And I did a lot of this yesterday, but I'm just trying to get back to the point I was in the other one. And then down like that. I don't know if I've done a perfect job of that. I mean, if I haven't, that's going to be good, because I'm going to show you something else. Okay, so see how this important point's like off the screen there? The other zoom button I want to show you is zoom out. Sometimes just zooming out a little bit is good. So I'm going to hit F2 for zoom, and I'm going to choose F4 for out. And I just kind of hit execute one more time, and it'll just zoom out a little bit for me. So those zoom buttons are really good. Now, if you really don't like what's happening, if you're like, I can't get the zoom to do what you want. Usually with zoom box, you can get what you want. There's a view window button, and it gives you all the choices, where you just go, wait a minute, I'll select the X for the windows, and I'll select the Y, how big my graph's going to be. So there's always that available to you if it's really not getting the settings you want. Okay, I'll just say once. Is this calculator perfect? No. Yeah? There are things about this that are a little bit wonky. However, you do get to use it for tests and exams, you know? So it's worth learning because the payoff is huge. When you're stuck in a question, like, oh, I forget how that graph goes, you can quickly type it in and know what the graph looks like. Yeah? Anyways, what does it ask me to do with those graphs? And I did some of these yesterday. G-solve is the important. It's graph solve. Once you hit G-solve, you can find just about anything on that graph. So I hit G-solve and it allows me to do, I can find the roots, I can find the maxes, the mins, the y-intercept, the intersection points, and I'm going to hit F6 to go to more. I can calculate y values, I can calculate x values, I can do integrals. We haven't used that word yet, but it's a few physics people, that's area under the curve, and we'll get to that stuff as the course goes along. But it does all of those things. So let's do the ones again. I know this is, we did these yesterday, but I'm just trying to get to where I was yesterday. Find the roots. Okay, so I go root, and it asks me which curve I want. You see it says y equals, because there's two curves in there. So I could go down and I could find this one, or I could go up and I could find that one. I can select the curve that I want to be on. And then I just press that one, I press enter. It finds the nearest root, negative 1.228. Great for checking things with the quadratic formula. You know, like, oh, did I do the quadratic formula right? You just put it in here. And then there's another root there. So if I hit the right arrow button, it just goes over to the other root. It finds the nearest root, and then I can right or left to find other roots that are on there. Well, it's the next thing it asks me to find in this PowerPoint here. Find the parabola's minimum value. So I'm going to go G-solve. And I'm going to go to minimum. And again, it asks me, which curve do you want to be on? I want to be on the parabola. So I hit enter, and it finds the minimum 0.2, 10.2, 0.2, negative 10.2 for me. Find the graph where they intersect. So I'm going to go G-solve, intersection point. And I'm just going to press enter, because there's only two curves, so there's nothing to do there. And it finds the intersection point. You're like, oh, no, I want the other intersection point. So I arrow over, and it finds the other intersection point for me. So finding intersections, no problem. What's the next one? Find the parabola's x value when the y value is 17. I think I did this wrong yesterday when I first went to type it in. I went to G-solve, and I went over here to these ones that say y-calc, x-calc. If it gives me the y value, I'm going to calculate the x value that goes with that. So it's actually an x calculate I want. And yes, the parabola. So I press execute on the parabola. And they say enter the y value you want to use. I want to use y value 17. And it says right there, at negative 2, you get 1.7. You get 17. And then if I go my right arrow over, it happens again at 2.52. So you can find individual x values that give a certain y value, or vice versa. You can find individual y values that give a certain x value. Any questions? Did I go too fast? I tried to slow that down a little bit. What questions do you have?
I think my calculator is just doing something odd.
Yes?
So when I input both of these, it only displays one line. And it's not, it only displays the parabola.
This happened to some people yesterday. So when I don't know what's going on, and I'm not very patient with it. When weird things happen, I immediately go in and I reset the main memory. Yes. And then I just try it again. So I don't know what happened, whether one line was turned off or something in the menus or something like that.
Okay.
So give it another try and then let me know what happens when that happens.
Trying to edit the scale so that they stretch out, but
Yeah, zoom out's not going to work too good. So go x min, x max, negative 10 to 10 or something like that. Yeah?
okay.
Yeah? So if you want things to be bigger, you're going to have to make the scale smaller, if that makes sense. You're going to have to make the V window smaller.
How do you do sine of 2? Okay. I changed the window, but it's still very tight.
Yeah, so now maybe we want to do V window and the Y min. I think negative 10 was a good Y min, but maybe the max only 5. Exit. Graph. Yeah? Oh, yeah, and it's not like that. So let's try this. Zoom, auto, and see what it thinks about it. Ooh, now I can do Z box. So the auto's good. Okay, some people are finding out that the zooming and it's especially annoying to you because you're used to your iPhone, which just when you want to zoom in and stuff, you just play around with the screen. We don't have a touch screen here, so we're going to have to get used to how to adjust those window settings as we need. Oh yeah, argument error. So,
Still keeps doing that for some reason.
oh, this is the same problem as yesterday.
Yeah. 'cause you
Oh,
reset it.
I can see it. See in the top one? I'm going to type it in for you. 5. I forget what it was. X squared. So x squared minus 2x minus 10. Enter, draw. Oh, it's just the way you were typing that in. Make sure you use this button for your x's. Good. Folks, this is exactly what we're supposed to be doing today. Playing with these calculators, getting to know how all this stuff works. You're still doing the same thing?
It's doing this now.
Oh, yes. So now, zoom, auto.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, zoom auto is my favorite go-to zoom, and it gives the calculator a chance to go, what do you got on the screen here? And it thinks it through and it gives you a good zoom.
Just remind us, I did zoom in, but I zoomed in wrong, and then when I want to go like back to auto, it won't let me.
Oh, yeah. It doesn't do anything better.
Yeah.
So I would do now, instead of that, I'd do zoom out. And I just zoom it out a little bit, and then maybe you get a nice picture there. Yeah? Once it's auto-zoomed, it's like, well, I already auto-zoomed. What do you want? You know, and sometimes the auto-zoom's good, and sometimes it's not so good.
Why is e to the power of 5 a straight line?
What's that?
Why is e to the power of 5 a straight line?
Oh, that's a good question. E to the power 5 is always e to the power 5. It's like if I graph y equals 7, I'll just get 7 all the way across. Y equals e to the 5 is just e to the 5 all the way across. What you want is e to the x. Check that one out. You're going to like that one.
Where did my x and y axis go?
I don't know. V window. I'm not sure. So what I'm going to do is go menu. When anything happens like that, I don't play around with it. I just immediately go reset the main memory. Yes. And then try again.
Okay.
And I just like that go-to move because I could play around and I could find out, you know, why those axes turned off. But I just find it easier just to reset everything and go again.
When I go to gsolve,
Yes?
it works for root, and it comes up with, oh, now it doesn't do that anymore. It just has the word, and it doesn't say, like, if I put in max or
Now
min,
hit-
it'll just say max.
Yeah, and then hit execute.
Oh.
Not found. Oh, because there's no max.
Oh,
So
right,
just
right.
hit the execute at the end to go. Okay, we've been solving problems like crazy. That's good. I'm glad we slowed that down and went over it. Know that we're going to do enough with these calculators that some of the little things that are happening, if you're like, oh, I still can't get it to do this, don't freak out. You know, as we go through it, you'll get used to the calculator and how it works. Everybody gets used to how to use these calculators because we use them so much. Yeah? Okay. So this is new. Oh, so we did use the zoom to experiment. When you're like not sure, try zoom out, try zoom in, try box, so you can get used to what zoom does. The V window, it's like, okay, the zoom won't get exactly what I want. You can just go into V window, and I'll show you on the screen here. The V window gives you lots of options. You can choose the X min, you can choose the X max, you can do all of those things in the V window. So instead of counting on the calculator to do the right thing, you're like, no, I want it to go from -10 to 10, from -5 to 5. There, that's what I want, okay? Oh, trace. So let's go back and talk about trace, because trace is a handy one too. If you just hit F1 for trace, then you can move right along the curve. You see? It keeps you on the curve. And as you move right left along the curve, you can look at all the points that are on there. So trace is handy to go, what is going on here? Trace is also handy if you want to do your V window settings. You go, well, what X, Y values are good for the V window? And trace will help you go, what X, Y values am I talking about? And allow you to set good V window settings. I'm saying V window because that's what it says on the screen. It's the view window. You know, it's the window settings that you're going to see. Use F6 to toggle between the equation and graph. So this F6 here goes from graph to equation. So if you just hit F6, I can go back and forth if I want to change something or see what, make a new graph or anything like that. So F6 is handy to go back and forth there. And from the equation window, experiment with line styles and turning graphs on and off. So if you go up to here to 5x squared, then I can use F4, which is style, and go, okay, well, I want to change the style of my x squared graph, and I just want it light, a nice dotted graph there. And you see over here, it's switched to a dotted graph. And so then when I go to the graph window, I'm going to press enter on there. See that one's dotted like that, you know. So you can change the styles. I don't change styles too much, but maybe you'd like to change the styles on it. And then turn graphs on and off. Let me go back to the graphs. I'm going to turn the line off. I'm going to press F1, and that turns the equal signs no longer highlighted. Oh, now there's somebody yesterday that one of the graphs turned off. We couldn't figure out what it was. They'd hit F1 and turned it off. See, the equal sign's not highlighted anymore, and when I draw, I only get the parabola, not the other graph. Maybe I don't want to delete that equation. I might need it in a minute, but I don't want it on my graph right now, so you can turn that off or on. So there's lots of options in there to play around with. I'm going to go back and turn that back on. I don't know what's happening next in the PowerPoint, but I want to make sure that's ready to rock and roll. Good. Restrict a graph's domain using a comma and square brackets. For example, y equals 14x plus 1 from 2 to 5. What? Okay, so y equals 14x plus 1. I'm going to go over, and it says I can restrict the domain. So those of you who did some piecewise function, this allows you to graph piecewise too. You say, okay, do a comma. Oh, I'm going to need I'm going to have to look in your calculator and see where the comma is, because I can't see on my screen where comma is. Oh, it's a regular button. I was looking on top. I thought it was going to be a special button. It's not a special button. There's comma right there, comma, and then it said square bracket 2 to 5. So I need a square bracket. Let's take a look here. Where do I find?
Shift plus and shift minus.
Shift plus. Oh, yeah, there they are down there. So square bracket, and then apparently we're only going to graph this from 2 to 5. So I go 2 comma 5. I've learned my lesson about where comma is. 2 comma 5, and then shift minus is the closing bracket. And when I draw that, see the line is only from 2 to 5. So when you want to do a piecewise, it does piecewise as well. You know, it'll do those graphing. I think most people don't need piecewise. You know, like they know what, you know, okay, from 2 to 5. When we're doing piecewise, we just usually draw the whole thing and then erase what you don't need, you know. But hey, it does it. That's kind of cool. Okay, stat mode. Here's the one that is a little bit interesting. And so I encourage you to leave graph mode completely behind now. You can play with that, and you're going to be using that to graph a million times. So you'll get to know all that stuff and take the knowledge you have and go, okay, that's a pretty good start. I basically know how to graph. And let's just talk about stat mode for a minute, because this is the one, I need to tell you, that caused us problem last year, in that I wasn't careful enough here, and then come test time, people couldn't really do this, and it caused us no end of trouble. So let's go through this slowly together. Create graphs from data and perform regression analysis. This is a really big deal. You've got a set of points, and you can find the best equation for it. A really tough thing to do manually, but the calculator does it easily. So we want menu 2, and what that is stat mode. You can see it up there in the corner there. It's got a little table, a little picture, and I'm going to go into stat mode. And it immediately gives me some tables, some table values that I can put some data into. And it says, enter X values in the first list, and the corresponding Y values in list 2, and then press execute to enter the value and use the cursor buttons to navigate. And then to graph, you press F1. You see it says graph down there? So I can put a bunch of points in there that'll become a scatter plot, and then I can hit F1 to graph. I'm going to do that in a second, but that's basically all I got to do. And then to perform regression, you go calc and do the line of regression. I'm going to show you that all in just a minute. I'll do those instructions in just a minute. Anyways, they got an example here. Here, try this one. Create the scatter plot that follows. So the first point, 0, 406. So I press 0 in the first column and press execute. Mine jumps down to the next row. So me personally, when I'm doing these, I do the first row first. I don't go row, column, row, column, row, column. I just go all the way down the first row. And it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then I arrow back up, and I go beside 0 into list 2, and I enter these other numbers, 406, 603, 769. And as you're typing this in, you're really bored, and you're like, this takes forever. And just, I want you to imagine me up at the University of Waterloo, stuck in a smelly couch, doing 4 hours of calculations, no joke, 4 hours of calculations to do what this calculator is about to do. So it takes a while to type those all in, but comparatively speaking to what it takes to get these curves, this is going to be really good. So what it said in the previous page is once I have those points, I can hit F1 and just graph those points, and I'll call it graph 1. You know, you can call it whatever graph you want. Maybe there's other graphs you're doing, but I'll call it graph 1. And there, it gives you a nice scatter plot to those points. See, it sort of curves this way, these dots. You know, if you were doing it on graph paper, these are the dots you would see. Now, the good news is it sort of knows what you're going to do. Like the calculator's like, oh, you want to do a regression? And it's like all ready to go here. It's like, I know what you want here. You know, so sometimes the calculator's intuitive. Sometimes with those V windows, it's not as intuitive, but here it is. It's real nice. It's got it right there. And so if you hit calc, it has all these choices. It says 2 variables, median, x squared, x cubed. I got all these choices of these regressions I can do. So I can do a regression to do a line, use x squared, use x cubed, use x to the power 4, use log, use exponential, power, sine, whatever I think is the appropriate regression. You're like, well, how do I know? Well, I often tell you, say, oh, do an x squared regression or do a sine regression. But in real life, you'd probably have to choose for yourself. You go, oh, it sort of looks like a downward parabola. I think I'll do an x squared. You know what I mean? Like, and so you'll have your choice in real life. I think this one tells us which one to do. It says, oh, no, I missed it. It told me, didn't it? It says, oh, determine a linear and a quadratic regression. So linear, I just press the x one. Linear, just x's. And so when I do that, it finds an equation for me really fast. Bang. It says, here's the best equation. Y equals 107x plus 484. That's the perfect line of best fit. You know, we did lines of best fit in grade 9, and we just sort of went, oh, like this? Yeah? Now it's found the perfect one. And you could copy it and paste it in, and then draw that graph if you wanted to. You know, or you can just hit draw, and it just draws the line of best fit on there. Okay? Maybe instead I want to do a quadratic regression, because actually it doesn't look like a straight line, does it? You know, so I do x squared, and it immediately finds the x squared, and it says, okay, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, and it gives you the a, the b, and the c that you need to make the best possible parabola available. For you stats people, you data management people, there's something else down there called the r squared value, and it's basically telling you how good a fit is this. This number is basically telling you, is quadratic a great fit here? And 0.998 means, yeah, it's a really good, this really looks like a quadratic. It really fits as a quadratic, you know? And so I'll draw that one as well, and you can see that the parabola is a really good fit. It almost exactly goes through the points if the proper A, B, and C are chosen, which it gave it to you. Definitely do those questions in the homework to make sure that this procedure you have down pat, because for some reason it slipped through our fingers last year and everybody had trouble with it come test time, okay? Any questions about that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, question.
What does superimpose occur on?
I've done that.
Oh.
Superimpose means it's over top of it like that.
Okay.
And one of the practice tests you might see where there's a point in the test where you go, now stop and have Mr. Todd come over and look at your graph. And I look and go, yep, looks good. You know what I mean? Or something like that. You know, so that could happen. Or it might be, I'll just take the equation. As long as you give me the equation, I'm like, you obviously know what you're doing if you got the right equation. Yeah. And table mode, create a table from an equation. Okay, so procedure, go back to menu and go down to table. This might be my favorite mode, is to get a table of values. Very handy. When you're like, what is going on here? This quickly comes up with the table of values. So I think it gives me a different graph, does it? Input a function for one of the y values. I already did that. I'm going to make new ones. Okay, really fast trick to get rid of old equations is, I remember a former student yelling at other people going, just hit F2, F1, because she didn't like waiting for everybody. She was impatient. But if you just go F2, F1, it just clears those out. So F2 for delete, and then F1 to confirm, and you get those gone. So let's say you've got some function, you're not sure exactly what it does. And so what you do is you put it into y, and you go, okay, I don't know what really is happening here. So I'll make up something reasonably complicated. 3x cubed minus 2x, you know, some random function, whatever function you run into the homework, like, I don't know what's happening with this function. And so you enter that in, and I press execute, and you have all these choices available. Well, one of them is table. And now, so if you hit table, you get a table of values, and it jumps right in. Now you can set up the table and set up what x's and y's it does here, but it's just great for looking, going, what's going on with this function? You can look through the x and y's. Let me go back. to the here, and see this set, short for setup. You can go in and say, okay, where do you want the table to start? Where do you want it to end? And how far do you want to go? So for instance, maybe you want it to go 1 to 5, but you want the step to be 0.1 because you're really trying to investigate something that's going on with it. So I went 0 to 5, and then if I exit out of there and make the table, it goes through and by 0.1 subs these numbers in. Great for factoring too, right? You're like, I got to find an X value that plugs into this thing that gives me 0. And you just go, and you track it down. Not the fastest way to do it. And no, we don't want you relying on those things, but there to bail you out when you're in real trouble. Yeah? Great stuff. So I did that. I inputted a function, and I worked through that. So they give me another one to do here. So instead of, I'm going to go up there and go F2, F1, get that out of there. They want me to do square root of x plus 2. So root x plus 2, enter. And I'm going to go to set and choose my x values. I'm going to go -5 to 5, and I'm going to go by, oops, I've already given away what's going to happen. -5 to 5, and I'm going to go by 1s. And I'm going to exit out of there, and I'm going to get my table of values. And look at, good information about the square root graph to remind you, oh yeah, there is nothing. The square root graph doesn't exist for negatives. It starts up at 0, and then I've got some values from 0 to 5 there. So handy stuff. When you absolutely forget what a graph looks like, the calculator's there to help you out. Use the table of values to find the value of y when x is 5.24. Well, I got to go back and do my setup, and I'm going to do start value 5, end value 6, step, I'm going to go by 0.01. This is really convenient. And you can do better than me as far as what numbers you chose, but I really wanted to show you what it does there. And now it's giving me all the x values between 5 and 6 going up by 0.01s. I want 5.24, so I'm going to go down, 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 5.24, and I can get the y value for 5.24. You're like, why didn't you just start at 5.24? I'm like, I wanted to show off what the calculator could do. You can get a whole domain of values plugged into there, a whole interval available. And equation mode, is this the last one? Who's got the papers in front of them? I'm trying to pace myself. Oh, resetting the memory was the last thing. Okay, so equation mode is the last one that we're going to do on here. Solve polynomial equations and systems of equations. Good stuff here. So menu, I don't memorize it. I go menu, I want equations. Let me just look around here. There it is, equations. And there's 3 types of equations: simultaneous, polynomial, and solver. Which one do they want me to do first?
Polynomial. Wait. No,
Do you remember this thing here? This is grade 10 academic. And we did a little bit in advanced functions. I tried to put my toe in advanced functions a little bit. A couple times tried to trap you in this situation where you were stuck with 2 unknowns. I mean, that's a big idea in math. If I give you 1 equation and there's 1 unknown, you should be home free. Yeah, you should be able to just solve for x. Even if it's x squared, x cubed, it'd be all right. But if I give you 2 unknowns, you're going to need 2 equations to narrow down where the solution is, what the solution is. And we're not going to graph it, but maneuvering these is a bit of a procedure. Use substitution or elimination. Are these words ringing bells out there for you? That'll come up. But anyways, your calculator can do it. I'm going to go simultaneous equations. How many unknowns? 2 unknowns. Now, it shows you how it wants you to set it up. It wants the equations ax plus by equals c. It has to be set up that way. And the first equation it's set up exactly like that. The a is 5, the b is 2, and the c is -3. This is great stuff because this is actually set up as what's called a matrice. It's like, forget the x's and the y's, just give me the numbers, and I'll work out the rest from there. Matrice is very powerful mathematical procedure. Second one, a value -2, that's the coefficient on x. B value -6. And let's just hesitate for a moment to talk about what the c value would be here. -11, right? Because the calculator's telling you this is how I want it set up. I don't know what you were given, but set it up this way. And the 11 isn't over here. It's over on the right-hand side of the equation, so I need a negative 11 in there. So if you get to questions like this in the homework and you get a wrong answer, that's probably what it is. And then you just hit solve, and it thinks about it for like no time whatsoever and gets these crazy decimal answers, negative 1.538 and 2.3461, and represents it in what's called a matrix. You know what I mean? Like just a list of numbers, not with the x's and y's, but it helps you interpret them there. Any questions about that? Yes.
If we have our x and our y solved, what's that number in the corner?
Over here?
Yes.
I don't know. Negative 20 divided by 13. Let me look. Maybe it's just giving me the decimal answer. Negative 20 divided by 13 is negative 1.53. So it's giving me the fraction answer. Oh yeah, look at that. Oh, I didn't even know that. That's really good. Yeah? Other questions? Oh, no, there was another one there. Where'd it go? Solve this equation. Okay, so back to equations. And this is a polynomial solver. Degree 2 or 3? 3. And it's got to be set up like this. Ax cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d. This one already is set up that way. So 5.2 is the x cubed. The b, the x squared, is negative 7.1. The c, no. 0. Sort of remember synthetic division and long division when you had to watch out for those zeros? No, oops, I forgot to put the d in. The d is 1.3. Yeah, this time we don't move it over. It says, oh, it wants the d on that side for some reason. And then I hit solve, and I get 3 different x values. There's 3 different times this equation. How nice is that? Because last year in advanced functions, they had to be whole numbers. Yeah? This, I don't know exactly what the calculator is doing. It might be doing what we did last year. What did we do last year? We went p at 1, p at negative 1, p at 2, p at negative 2. And we went through until we found one. The calculator might be like going, p at 1 was too big. P at 2 was too small. And it goes, oh, okay, 1.5. No, 1.2. No, 1.18. And it can do it really fast. Bang, 1.188. So it's doing the same thing you did, except it can do it faster and get the decimal answers. We'll talk more in calculus about how to get these answers without relying on a calculator. Yeah? And I'll show you an awesome procedure, but that's much later. And I think the last slide is actually the first slide or something like that. It tells you how to reset the memory. Oh no, that was store and recall. So we did that yesterday. This PowerPoint's in a different order than the one that's online. Same stuff though. Any questions about all that?
When I do like the square brackets and the commas, it won't like draw it at all. It'll just say error.
Oh, it has to be a comma after the 14x plus 1 as well.
Oh,